Doom vivamus vivamus Epicureans. This is the Marvel Epic Collection Podcast one-shot edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I will be joined by Stojr in, well, just a moment. We are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and this one-shot is going to be our brief thoughts on today's issue, which is Avengers Annual number 10 by Friends Betrayed. Written by Chris Claremont, pencils by Michael Golden, inks by Armando Gil. Alright, so Spider-Woman rescues a mysterious Jane Doe who had been chucked off the Golden Gate Bridge. After some investigating, the woman turns out to be Carol Danvers, better known as Miss Marvel. Well, Carol appears completely brain dead. Something has happened to her. Her mind is just not in her body anymore. So, Spider-Woman calls upon her new friends, the X-Men, to help out. Specifically, she calls on Charles Xavier to do his mind thingy and learn what happened to Carol. Well, it turns out there's a new mutant named Rogue who can touch others and take their abilities, and Rogue did this to Carol, and then we witness her doing the same to Captain America and to Thor, and whenever she does this, she weakens the people that she's touching. Well, naturally, when two of the Avengers' big guns are taken down, the rest come out to do something about it. It turns out Rogue had been working with Mystique of the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to release their other members from Riker's island prison. Well, the Avengers are able to fight them off. However, primarily because Rogue's abilities don't work against the Vision, Iron Man, and Wonder Man. I don't know why I had however there in my notes. This is what happens when you turn into Anchorman and just read your notes without thinking about it, right? Okay, so the Avengers are able to fight them off, mostly because Rogue can't suck the powers out of Vision, Iron Man, or Wonder Man, because they're not human. Well, okay, Iron Man is, but his metal costume is not, right? Rogue and Mystique manage to escape either way. The other members of the Brotherhood, however, are recaptured. And the story wraps up with Carol being revived and her facing the Avengers to reprimand them for not coming to Carol's defense when she was essentially captured and raped in the infamous Avengers number 200 issue. Alright, so this is an important issue for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we get the introduction of Rogue, who will become a very important member of the X-Men in the future. I mean, heck, right now, ignoring the big crossover future thing that just happened, I don't even remember what it was called, X-Men Revelations or whatever. Ignoring that, Rogue is currently leading one of the X-Men teams. She's the star of Uncanny X-Men, essentially. When it's not being interrupted by an event, of course. This issue also cleans up and restores the character of Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel after the said infamous Avengers number 200. Now, I'm going to admit it is a book I have not yet read, but I know it through its reputation. Although I am left wondering, why did Rogue attack the Avengers to begin with? Why would she risk getting them involved and potentially hurting her and Mystique's plan to free the Brotherhood? It seemed kind of pointless to me. Maybe I missed it in the text. I could see trying to gain the strength of Thor, maybe, and the skill of Captain America. Maybe that's what it was, but I don't recall that actually being explicitly said why she was doing this. I did like seeing the new Brotherhoods return, though. I thought that was fun. And the art is excellent, too. Now, granted, I have not read a lot of Michael Golden's stuff, but I did get the chance to meet him a couple of months ago at a con, and he was incredibly nice. Also very patient with a guy at the con who was in front of me, who was a bit of a jerk with the big pile of books that he wanted signed. But nonetheless, Michael Golden was a pleasant individual. He was a kind man. His style here, I thought, feels kind of proto-McFarlane in a way, particularly with the big eyes on some of the characters. I looked into some of the stuff that he did, and he did a lot of early Micronauts, did a lot of the Punisher books too. He is also going to be the artist on the two Marvel Fanfare issues that are later on in this volume. Let's see, a couple little things that I noticed here. Let me see if I can pull this up on the comic viewer. On page 144, let's get the comic viewer up there. On page 144, we have a little girl in the hospital who's named Maddie Pryor. I think this is an example of Claremont reusing the name later. I don't know if this is the Madeline Pryor that shows up later in comics. I suspect not. I suspect this is maybe just a name Claremont likes, and so he threw it in here. But I'm not certain on that. Maybe Stojr has some thoughts. So not any big spoilers there. Oh, and speaking of my thoughts of Michael Golden kind of being a precursor to McFarlane's style, if you see on that next page, 145, the fourth panel, that picture of Madeline Pryor with the big eyes and the big curly hair, I don't know why, that just kind of struck me as McFarlane-esque, but Michael Golden was here first, so credits to him, shout-outs to him. Okay, that is all of my thoughts. I'm going to pass this off to Stojr, and then I'll come back to wrap things up after we've heard from our friend.
Avengers Annual number 10 sees the introduction of Rogue to the X-Men and some interesting art by Michael Golden, which is not necessarily my cup of tea, but I do appreciate how this is a bit different, and the care and artistry that goes into this. I think it's interesting takes on all the different characters in here. Story-wise, I think this is a much-needed story, right? So obviously this issue is known for the introduction of Rogue as part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The effects that has on Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and how eventually, as we all know, Rogue joins the X-Men. But here is her introduction as a villain in an Avengers comic, which, by the way, is also collected in Avengers Avengers Volume 11 Epic Collection. This is called This Evil Reborn, or The Evil Reborn, rather, which has that cover from Avengers 200, as well as this annual in the back of the issue, back of the book. And I think it's really important to point out why the Avengers Annual, or the Avengers the Avengers volume of issue 200 and this annual are really almost meant to go hand in hand, because at the end of that Avengers issue 200, there is some really weird decisions made with how Carol is going to what she does, right? And it's summarized in this issue, so I'm not spoiling anything, but basically, she goes off with a villain who might be her kid but not her kid, and the Avengers just let her leave after having this baby that gets quickly advanced in age, and sort of as if she's fallen in love with this person. And none of it makes any sense. It's almost completely obvious to the reader that she's being mind controlled. She really gets screwed over by her friends. And this issue has her calling them out. And I think that's really important. And I think it's really smart of them to course correct back then. I mean, this happened within a year or two, because both of them are collected in this volume. And I think that it was sloppy writing in Avengers 200. I don't know if there was a sort of always this intention, or if they realized they made the mistake. I didn't do any research before this. I'm just kind of rating and reviewing this issue. But Carol is justifiably angry, and she is upset, and she has every reason to be. So I think it's an important issue that kind of goes hand in hand with that Avengers issue. I think there's enough recap in here that you don't need to include the Avengers 200 issue in this X-Men Epic Collection. But if you want more of the full story, check out the Avengers Epic Collection, This Evil Reborn. I think Rogue makes herself out to be a pretty strong villain throughout this issue. She's able to absorb, various powers such as Thor and Captain America, and kind of take people out. I think later on, you see her doing that with non-mutant characters a little bit less, but I don't think they ever fully, go away from that. So yeah, I think this is an enjoyable issue. You get to see the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants fight the Avengers and provide a real threat to them. You get the introduction of Rogue. You get some very important story points here. And also sets up Carol to kind of hang out with the X-Men for the foreseeable future, which is something I don't think people really remember, that, Carol during this era is with the X-Men, and as we move into the rest of this volume and into the next volume, the Brood Saga, she's along the way. And I think they've revisited that. So some of Captain Marvel's more recent books, where they've been out in space and things like that, have sort of reminded people about this era and her time with the X-Men. All right, looking forward to the next issue of Uncanny X-Men 151.
All right, thank you, Stojr, and thank you, the audience, for watching and listening. We'll be back again tomorrow with another one-shot, and you can check us out on YouTube, where we post the episode schedules and currently have a poll for you to choose which Epic Collection we will read and review in March. Check that out, and go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you like what we're doing. I put Stojr and my link trees in the description if you ever want to find us on the internet. So thanks again, and we'll catch you next time for another episode that will be just as epic.